Hey
Perfect.
guys, welcome to this week's episode. Today we are joined with Susan, who's someone that really thinks outside the box, and her content really stands out and is something that I've been keeping an eye on. And I just thought, what an amazing episode this could be. Susan, do you want to give people like a quick introduction, like who you are, what you do, and we kind of pick it up from there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Susan, and my business is called the Coaches Content Creator. And my kind of, I suppose you would call it like the program, is the Content Club. So we help coaches, more specifically fitness coaches, to really dial in on their message so that they can create better content, which in return gets them leads, sales, clients, daily, weekly, monthly, and just essentially whenever they need that hit into their business.
Amazing. And okay, I guess like diving straight into it. And I guess the biggest thing is we hear is content's a bit of a hit and miss sometimes for
Yeah.
coaches in terms of making it work. What are kind of what was the kind of like light bulb moment for you in terms of starting the content club, and what was the kind of realization that this is something that needs kind of fixing, I guess, for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the light bulb moment was really that there is no one thing that works all the time, and there is no one thing that is going to take your business from 0 to 100. I am very like process and data driven, and I just love being able to put something together. If it works, dive into it and say, why does this work? And if it doesn't work, why does it not work? So do more of that, do less of that. And for me, the kind of really light bulb moment was watching coaches think that they could do one strategy, one series of posts or one type of post, the blunt post, everyone's done the blunt post, and expect that to just deliver results there and then. And actually realizing that, yes, these posts on their own can do super well, but they have to be surrounded by strategy and they have to be surrounded by other great pieces of copy and content, so that it can all work together. So yeah, I think the light bulb moment for me was really noticing that people were waiting on the one solution, but actually it has to be a kind of 365 day a year process to be able to then be predictable with putting out call to actions, and inviting people into your world.
Yeah, and I know you said like the for your 65 day thing. It sounds so similar to what coaches would say to their clients in
Yeah,
terms of having it work for nutrition training.
yeah,
Um, and I guess with that as well, it's one of those. It's probably very easy from to teach, like do a blunt post,
mm,
but sometimes it works. And I know like when I was personal training, sometimes it worked, but like when it
yeah,
doesn't, you're just kind of like left guessing. Um, with the data as well, I find it's a weird one in terms of some people either super creative or super data driven. It's a cool balance, and I think that then removes a lot of the stress if you've got numbers and data. What kind of data do you track from a content perspective, and how do you measure the like success of content? That's a big
absolutely.
question.
Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on what platform you're using. So I know that for me, like email marketing is my most like successful platform. It's the platform that I know I connect with people the best, simply because my style of content works on that platform. I would rather write for, pages and pages and pages, give people loads of value, and then invite people to come back and have a conversation. And that works best on email marketing. So for me, the kind of email software that I use, and all the other softwares, they're really good in terms of like they just show you the data straight away. Like as soon as you log on, it will tell you like your interactions, your subscription, and your people that subscribe, your open rate, what time they opened it at. So for me, like the email marketing side of things is really key in terms of actions that people take when you send that. So actions would be things like at what time in the day did they open, because you can then start to send to different people at different times to kind of optimize. What have they clicked on? How many times have they clicked on it? Because the how many times people clicked on it is really key. Because you know yourself, like something comes up in your email and you click on it and you're like, that's quite nice. I'll come back to it later. And then you come back and then you leave and you keep coming back. So the fact that you're able to see when and how many actions somebody's taken is, incredible. And, me myself can actually do other actions off the back of that to kind of work on those conversions. So for email marketing, I would say it's actions that people take that I'm really interested in, and how frequent they take those actions as well. When it comes into things like social media, complete transparency, I'm not somebody that will sit in my insights and look at followers gained, followers reached, like all that kind of stuff. I just don't find that a helpful metric for me. I find it more helpful as, how many people are coming into my DMs asking a question that they want answered. How many people are mentioning in a conversation that, they've learned something on the page, or they want to continue the conversation from a piece of content that's went out there. They're the most or the more valuable metrics to me. There was times that, I was looking into insights and I wanted to see how many people it was reaching and all this kind of stuff. But I found that when I focused on that, I was only focusing on reach, and reach doesn't necessarily equal bringing people into your world and being able to help them. So for me, Instagram is more about meaningful connections and what those connections look like. And 9 out of 10 times, they look like having that conversation in the DMs, being able to give value, being able to help, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I relate to that a lot in terms of what I found anyway when I was looking super deep into my
Yeah.
insights from a fitness content perspective. When I was making that, it was it's easy to just go super controversial and like it gets more engagement or just
Mm.
annoy people, but then it doesn't convert to anything on the back end. Um, how would you look at taking those? What is there like a set posting types you would try and recommend for coaches in terms of like getting people in their DMs and getting conversations opened? That's meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I always look at all content, regardless of what platform it is. I always look at having kind of monthly checklists, weekly checklists, and daily checklists. So, an example of like a monthly thing that you would do on social media, a monthly post, a monthly action that you would take would be like that kind of blunt post, like welcoming people in. So, that kind of blunt post that lets people know that you're actively ready to help them. That'd be an example of a thing you would do monthly. The example of a thing that you would do weekly is make sure that you're sharing results at least once per week, right? And then the example of something you would do daily would be mentioning your kind of brand values, and then touching upon like content and coaching pillars that you have within the business. So obviously there's loads of gaps inside of that, right? You're not just going to do, on the first of the month, do a blunt post and then disappear for the month. But I would always make sure that you've got monthly, weekly, and daily actions and posts and content that has to go out to keep that consistency. Of course, keeping it seasonal. So being aware of the fact we're in January at the moment, being aware of the fact, okay, right, we're going to come into summer shortly, and being aware of the fact we're coming into December, whenever that time rolls round. But inside of that, I always think it's nice to have, yes, structure and yes, kind of those KPIs that you want to be hitting within your content, but it's also quite nice to give yourself a bit of freedom to create content when you feel the need to respond to something that's happening. And when I mean responding, it could be something like, maybe there's something happening in the news about weight loss, or I don't know, protein powder, or whatever it's going to be that comes up in the news. But equally, maybe there's something that comes up in your DMs that you actually think, I could write about this and I could help people about it. So I find it really useful to have these kind of, I suppose, non-negotiables that have to be hit within your content. And they would probably look like results, value, objection handling, and also showcasing you outside of your business. And then outside of all of that, I would then allow yourself the time to maybe create slightly more ad hoc content so that you are really seasonal, so that you are putting content out there that is very applicable to that moment in time. I'm all for scheduling ahead and making sure that you're planned ahead for the next couple of weeks. However, I've been caught out in the past where I've maybe done like a month in advance, sorry, and you realise halfway through something happens and you're like, oh, I could write about that. But if I do that, I'm going to knock off the entire schedule that's coming up. So I always find it a helpful kind of balance to be a week to 2 weeks ahead, and also still allow yourself that freedom. And for some coaches, having that freedom with their content will look like, seeing a reel that somebody else does, interpreting it in their own way and putting that out there. So that's the kind of like free flowing content that I would kind of describe, because you know yourself, like trends and things that are working, you know, are only really working for like a couple of days and then it's on to the next thing. So I find that's a good balance between being scheduled but also having your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, because then that's the thing. Otherwise, you mentioned as well, like if you've scheduled it for 2 weeks in advance and you see
Yeah,
something happen, if you talk about it 2 weeks later, it's probably going to be way too late.
exactly, exactly.
And then in terms of the post scheduling, what are some of them like actually one of the mistakes I kind of often see, and it's something that I kind of like almost just like looking at what I was doing wrong from a content perspective is I think it's hard it's easy to slip away from just creating engaging content and not talk about and not make it super easy for people to
Yeah.
know what you actually do as a service or as an offer. um is that how would you then slot in your kind of values on a daily basis in your content? Like, is there any examples? Is there any kind of things your clients do really well in terms of actually slotting
Yeah, yeah.
your work into your content?
So the first thing I would say is like people who are able to do that quite naturally are able to do it because they are so incredibly clear about what they do, but they're also incredibly clear about what they don't do. And I think a lot of the time when people are wanting to talk about values and they're wanting to talk about the program, that's good, that's cool, we need to do that. But you also need to talk about what you don't want to do and what you don't value. Because what we find is actually your content is there to attract and repel, and people don't like the fact that your content will repel people. But you have to repel to leave the people there that are genuinely interested in what you do. So the first thing I would say is if you're sitting thinking, I don't know how to talk about my brand values, I don't know how to showcase them, you probably need to get a little bit clearer on them. Because when you are super clear on them, it feels very natural and it feels like something that you just have to tell people because it is just part of the identity of either you or of the business. So first protocol is get super clear on that. If you are incredibly clear and you feel confident within those brand values, because we've all been there before where we'll say, yeah, like we value this, but you're only saying it because that's a buzzword. So when you actually genuinely feel that that's your value and that's the thing that you're there to do, and you're still struggling to kind of convey it, the easiest thing to do is to just come out and say it. A lot of the time, and especially around kind of fitness programs and like coaching programs, a lot of the time, the biggest question that a prospect has is how does it work? What does it look like to come into my life? How is this kind of, you know, relationship that we have going to work? How is the program going to work? And a lot of the time, there'll be many coaches that have values and, you know, areas that they really want to focus on to say, you know, will work around your life, right? There are loads of coaches that will say something like that. So let's run with that example. And a lot of the time, what you just need to do is come out and say, I know you're busy. I know you've got 101 plates spinning, but here's how we're going to make it work. Because I value you having autonomy and freedom and the ability to do X, Y, Z whilst still getting in shape or, you know, doing whatever the kind of desired outcome is. A lot of the time, you just need to come out and say it. And I think some people don't particularly like doing that because it can then start to feel a bit too blunt. I've always found that kind of blunt and direct marketing and content is the better way to go around things when you genuinely want responses and connections. You know, there's a time and a place to be a little bit softer, and I think everyone should have the balance of both. But I find if there's a point that you really want to get across and you want people to be super clear about, i.e., your brand values, you just have to come out and tell people that that's what they are. And that would be, you know, in an example of like an email or a social media post. Other things that you can do to get those brand values across, I suppose almost like daily, is link them into other pieces of content that you're doing. So if you are, for example, sharing social proof on your stories, you know, I know a lot of coaches are doing that kind of 3, 4, 5, even 7 times a week, is actually, you know, having that result, telling people why it's a good result and linking it back to your brand values, telling them, you know, X was only able to achieve this because we focused on XYZ and the XYZ would be your brand values. So be really direct with it, tell people what they are, and also don't be afraid to reference back to them. when it's applicable. And I would say that results and transformational posts are probably the easiest way to loop back to brand values, because if your client has got a great result with you, then it is because of your brand values. So it's really easy to slot it in there.
Yeah, amazing. And like, I guess that's where having those values super clear and linked somewhere is going to make it a lot easier. Um, with brand values, one thing recently I kind of interesting, like I guess in this topic of conversation, one thing I found super easy for that was just to look at pen and paper and just look at what's the bigger 10-15 year vision,
Yeah.
mission, and then link it, like then it's easy to distill the values in terms of where it links. How how did you go about like getting clear on your brand values? And then like yeah, how did you get clear? And I guess that's when it
Yeah.
will tie together to everything else.
Um, I suppose the short answer is time. Like the
Yeah.
short answer is I've given it a lot of time. And I think if you are a wee bit newer into your business, or maybe you've just changed niche and it feels like you're starting from scratch, I think you need to go through the motions. I think you need to go through working with people that you like, working with people that you wouldn't want to work with again, making the mistakes that you're going to make, having your successes, being really clear on, again, what works, what doesn't work, and actually just sifting through the noise. Social media is a noisy place. We know that. We know that there's loads of things. People have got opinions. They want to tell you how they do it. And if you were to search like brand values or how to find your voice on Instagram, again, you'd open up an entire new world of people's opinions. And there are 100%, there's going to be people that you will take things from that'll be your light bulb moment, and that'll make you say, that's a brand value, or that's not, or etc. But I honestly believe with things like that come down to you and who you are and how you're going to connect to people, it takes a bit of time. It takes, again, almost like the process and the data, going through the process to find what works for you, jotting down what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and starting to sift through it that way.
Yeah, and it's almost like keeping it open, keeping it as like a never-ending process in terms of maybe having it ideas somewhere and then just constantly like updating as you
Absolutely.
come through.
Absolutely. Like things will change and they will evolve. Like if you can think of, I don't know, your favorite like clothing brand that you shop with, if you look at what they do just now and what they did even like 2, 3 to 5 years ago, it's probably going to be a little bit different. Like the campaigns they're doing, the way in which they're doing the campaigns, the style of marketing, like even down to the way they're doing their visuals will probably be completely different, because again things evolve over time, and you are trying to keep up with what the general consensus is in your industry um whilst it's still feeling important and I suppose valuable to yourself. So things will change. Like once you've got your brand values and you're really clear on them, don't think, oh, that's me, I never need to do them again. Like they will, because again, some of them will become irrelevant in a few years, and other ones you might want to double down on eventually. But again, that's a time, that's a process, that's eliminating the things that don't work and honing in on the things that do work.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one with that perspective as well. And one thing I personally found hard, and it'll be interesting to see how people find it, is um like you almost you evolve like as you change as a person, as you learn more, your content then grows with it and it changes and it attracts those kind of people. And I almost think sometimes it's like not being afraid to like show what you're into now. Like if you change as a personality, if you like read certain books, if
Yeah.
you like training style changes for a coach, just not feeling like you're stuck as like that person
Mhm.
2 years ago, and you
Yeah.
can kind of evolve with it. Otherwise, you just like start doing stuff you resent, and
Yeah.
it
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I've always kind of maintained, and sometimes I speak to coaches who are like, I want to change my niche, but I'm scared that like this niche will be too small or it's too niche. One of the things to say is like we live in a world with literally endless possibilities and endless combinations of people, right? There are so many billion people on this planet, and the idea that you were to have a niche that was far too small as a fitness coach, I'm not sure that that is actually a thing, right? Because again, there are so many combinations of people that if you are a coach who enjoys doing this one specific thing, this one specific way, there are many other people that are currently doing that or are curious about doing that. So there's endless possibilities in terms of the direction that you're going to take things in, because where you are right now, you might stay there and that is grand. Like if you found your calling and you want to just keep going with the way you are, amazing. But there will be a lot of people that over time transition through, and the thing that will hold them back is the fear of the next step not being as prosperous or not being as widely known as the step that they're currently in. But the thing I would say to that is there are endless combinations of people in the world. If you can think it, there are people doing it or wanting to do it.
Yeah, and it's one of those like even recently for me, we had a client jump on board that's like a career change coach, and that to me like completely blew my mind. I'm like, there's like endless coaches in in this space. Um, and in terms of niching and uh going down like towards a particular audience, do you find it a sweet spot in terms of how niche you should go, or is it just a matter of like what you enjoy doing? If you enjoy being very direct with like one small group of people, or or does it go broad at the beginning and it kind of narrows as you find out kind of what you enjoy, kind of thing?
I think it depends on the individual. I mean, I know some coaches that are broad and they will just say, you know, we help people do X, Y, Z, and they've got phenomenal businesses. I know other people that help one specific person with one specific problem. And sometimes you look at that, you know, the blurb in the bio, and you think, do these people exist? Like, is that a thing? But again, they've got booming businesses. I think it's just about knowing where your strengths are, and again, over time, over data, over the process, figuring out where your efforts are best placed. There will be niches that have far more of a pool of people that you can go to, and there will be niches that are much, much smaller. However, the smaller the niche you go into, the more authority you can create quicker, because there will be less people competing for those prospects' attention. The broader you go, the more, again, kind of competing that you're probably going to have to do, because it'd be very quick to go and find 10 fitness coaches that work with general population to lose fat and feel healthy. You could find that within seconds, but it would be very hard to find somebody that, I don't know, helps mums that are working full time, have 5 children, and want to lose specifically £14, right? It's still quite broad, but it's a lot nicher than the first example. That would take me a wee bit longer to go off and find. However, if I found them and I got into their world and I was a part of that world, I would probably come across very few coaches that would be able to help you achieve XYZ. So the minute you came across a coach, you'd be more inclined to keep following their content, because it's probably going to be something that you've not seen before. It's probably going to be a different angle on the problem that you've got, you know, spoken to you in a different way. Whereas again, if you're in Gen Pop, you've probably already heard these problems, heard these solutions. So there's pros and cons. The pool is bigger, the bigger a niche you go, but you can probably get more authority the smaller niche you go. And again, it just comes down to, where do you as a coach want to place your efforts? Do you want your efforts going into convincing people you are the best ever, or do you want your efforts going into building authority and getting clients off the back of that? Again, it just depends. And your speciality. There are coaches that have very specific qualifications and they want to use those specific qualifications, and there are other coaches that don't, and they just genuinely want to help people in general. Again, it just comes down to where your fulfillment's going to lie, and then deciding where you want to place the effort in the convincing or the authority side of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the one thing. It's like the one thing you decide. It's almost like going more all in on it. I feel
Yeah.
like if you go all in on bigger pool of people, go all in on a more
Mhm.
targeted thing, just doing one thing, like going super hard, like really focus on one rather than like trying to juggle both like worlds of
Yeah.
people. And with the last kind of side on content, I guess copywriting and emails in general, where do you see like the Instagram, Facebook like landscape going? Is it just going to get, do you feel like it's just going to get shorter and shorter in terms of content? Do you still see your clients do well with like longer form, like single picture copy focus style posts? Yeah.
I think that you need to have variety. I think that Instagram is a platform that favours knowing that you are unpredictable. So one of the things, over the last couple of years, the popularity of things like Reels has just got, bigger and bigger and bigger because of TikTok and all this kind of stuff. But what we find is people that at the beginning were like, I'm going to jump on this and I'm going to, capitalise on this. Amazing. They've done so well, and, hats off to them for putting in the effort when they didn't know what the return was going to be. What you find is after a certain point, that is no longer giving them the bang for the buck that they were getting at one point. And there's actually a lot of big accounts that, again, were going heavy on kind of, video content, that are now starting to introduce carousels, single posts, even going live or longer format video. And what they're finding is that the more unpredictable they can be with Instagram, the more Instagram's having to push it out there to get more people to see it. And Instagram's testing, right? We're all on a free platform. We're all using something that they really don't want any money from us, but they are testing what we do and how it works. So the first thing I say is variety will always trump everything, I believe. And I think one of the kind of sides of proof of that is even platforms like TikTok that are short form video platforms have now introduced longer form. You can now just put up pictures. You can put up a single picture. You can put up almost like, the equivalent of a carousel, pictures that you can scroll through. So even a platform that came out and said, hey, we're short form video, has already started to add in more variety. And I think that's a little bit of an indication. What I would say in terms of like the coaching space and the fitness coaching space, it depends on your niche. So I remember this is about a year and a half ago, I had somebody come to me and they were like, I work with busy parents, they're time strapped, they feel like it's just going to be impossible. What do you think I should be doing? Jumped on their account and all they were doing was like trending reels and like, kind of like skits and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's cool, right? Your content looks good, you've got it nailed, and I can understand if I was a parent, I would probably relate to that. But you need to think about it. You're telling me that parents don't have any time. Do you honestly think that they want to sit on Instagram, dedicate time watching videos, have to have that volume up to be able to hear you when in their world they don't have any time, they've got kids screaming round about them all the time, and they probably just want some quiet time to themselves? And the coach was like, never thought about that. They then started introducing a little bit of variety. They still did the thing that they loved because they loved creating these reels, and that's great. But they started introducing posts, carousels, being more present on stories, and they straight away had more people getting in touch with them. Not because they changed their message, not because they changed their delivery, not because they changed the messaging within their content, but because they had changed the delivery of the content. The delivery suited that niche better. More people were seeing their content because there was busy parents in their audience that were scrolling past going, I don't want more noise. I don't want more noise coming into my headspace and, taking up all that space. I just want to be able to consume on my own time. So right now, it depends on your niche. But even at that, I'd still be going down variety. Coming into 2024, there are a lot of people that are predicting that reels and short form video will actually, the popularity will start to drop a little bit, and actually that longer form content, even in the form of video, but more specifically text. So whether that be, single picture, long caption, or whether that be carousel with text split up, there are kind of a lot of predictions at the moment that that's going to become quite big in 2024, because I think the initial novelty of short videos is starting to wear a little bit. And yes, attention spans get shorter with that, and yes, attention spans are still shorter. But I think people are more aware of that, and they're trying to make this conscious effort to not consume quick content and to actually get some really good, meaningful connections going that tend to happen over reading longer, blurbs of text or listening to longer videos. Even things like podcasts. Podcasts are massively on the rise. Again, people want that longer connection as opposed to that quick hit that they're getting. So I think this year will have a lot of variety. I think there'll be a lot of change. I think it'll be a case of continuing to test and continuing to see what works for you. Understanding, yes, there are people on Instagram that will teach you only how to do reels. There will be people that will teach you only how to design a carousel. That's cool, that's their niche, but it's not your world. And you can take bits from people here and there, but it doesn't need to become the only thing that you do. The only person that will know what works for you is you, by trying and testing and going through the process.
That's really interesting because I found it as well. Like I used to have this like anxiety around like like content, like it's gonna be something new. I wouldn't really know what to do with it. But like kind of looking into it with like a few years on, it seemed like even as things changed, the
Mm-hmm.
like foundations are still exactly like very similar. Like when I was doing IG lives or IGTV videos or like emails, the format you can still take the like foundations of that and then apply it into whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like it's just doing more. And it's like as well as like I sometimes hear coaches say like I'm posting every day, but I'm not getting results. And it's like it's that constant split testing and refining.
Yeah, absolutely. I went through a period of I was maybe posting like 5 times a week, and I thought, right, I can ramp this up to seven, like no bother at all. Ramped it up to seven, and there was little to no difference in terms of like inbounds. And I thought, right, let's double it and see if that makes a difference. So let's go from the five we were doing to 10 per week. And there was no difference. There was no difference in inbound. There was no difference in the connections and the quality of connections I was having. So scaled it back. Um, and again, this year I'm going to scale it back up because it might just not have been a great time at that time because the market changes. For my audience, fitness coaches, their desires change, their needs for the content they want to consume changes. So for me this year, I'm going to be doing lots of testing of not only delivery, but frequency and timing. And my metric for judging how successful that will be the amount of inbound and the quality of inbound. One thing that I'm always quite strict on is the minute that quality goes downhill, something needs to change. So if I start getting inbounds from people that are just not a right fit, something somewhere needs to change, and I'll go back to the drawing board and look at everything from the messaging to even the design of the post, the kind of imagery, all the way through to the call to action, all the way through to the heading. Like if the quality diminishes, I go back to the start. But that's only because quality and connection is my metric. If your metric that you wanted to focus on was insights and was reach and was engagement, then you might have other ways of testing. But for me, it's quality. It's really the thing that I'll know whether it works or doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's yeah, no, it's one of those things as well with content is like I think I heard this quote somewhere. It's like the for from a business perspective, like you only win if you're able to keep playing. And it's like the
Yeah,
same with anything. It's like it's the same here, like you mentioned, it's like constantly like refining and like
yeah,
um not feeling like it's done just because you're posting content. And that's where I think sometimes the disconnect is. Like if I'm doing the content, like I should be getting more inbounds, but it's like it's not, it's constantly going back to the drawing board.
yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like I was giving that example there are people on Instagram that will tell you reels are the only thing in the world that will make you money. And there are also people telling you that like social media is the only thing that will make you money. I know businesses that are incredibly good at what they do and they're able to work with hundreds of people and they use Instagram like once a month, right? So everyone's standard and everyone's way of getting clients and keeping clients and having connections is completely different. On the whole, yes, the more you show up, the more people will see and they'll get to know you. But for some people, that's not the case. And I think a lot of it is actually just, as I said, taking bits from people that you want to take but doing it in your own way, and just understanding that just because this person said this doesn't mean you need to apply it to your business. You're allowed to make your own decision about frequency, timings, how you deliver it, what you want to deliver. You're allowed to make that decision yourself.
Yeah, and it's one of those as well, like you mentioned, it's like not feeling like there's just one way to do it. Like
Yeah.
I know everyone are super heavy on Instagram at the moment, but Facebook, for instance, is still
Yeah.
just a viable platform for, especially for like particular audiences. It's just like testing more for your own stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of the biggest things from a testing perspective and the biggest numbers and metrics to keep track of is actually more towards conversations happening from the content rather than necessarily like views or likes. They're good, but
Yeah.
like you say, it's actually having tracking conversations, because that's going to
Yeah.
be for fitness coaches what
Yeah.
gets calls. Um,
Absolutely.
and just the last one, and again, it'll be interesting to see from a content perspective, how that can sound. But from a content perspective, um, is there anything you would suggest for people looking at improving, refining from a copywriting perspective, and just creating more engaging content that gets people from a Facebook group, from an Instagram post to actually message them?
So the first thing I would say is the purpose of you showing up on Instagram is to get clients, right? And you can tell me that you want to show up on Instagram just to make the world a better place, but you're there to get clients. You're there to fill your program and get clients. People who are on your profile as potential prospects, people who are scrolling through Instagram and you pop up because they have chosen to follow you, are looking for something that they don't already have in their life. Otherwise, you wouldn't follow them, right? I wouldn't go and follow somebody that was, teaching me how to set up like a Canva account, right? I don't need that in my life. I'm not going to follow that person. But I might follow the person that tells me how to make my Canva stuff look like it was made on Photoshop, as an example. Okay, I can't do that, so I will follow that person. Your prospects are no different. They're following people because that bio, the pinned posts, the highlights, the initial thing that they landed on has showed them that you have something that they don't have in their life. So when you then continue to post, you need to keep delivering that. First thing I would say is, are you guiding people to a better place? Are you taking them from the frustrated place that they're in, the unhappy place that they're in, and showing them that you can make life even just that 1% better for them? There are not many people that are looking for the 100% complete, transformation from one specific person. A lot of prospects are just looking to be that little bit better at whatever it is the thing that you sell is. So whether it be weight loss, if they're losing a pound a week right now, how can you show them how to lose 2 pounds, right? And I think a lot of coaches are trying to solve the whole puzzle rather than just focusing on their corner of it. Because again, we've seen this in the last couple of years, the rise of people needing help beyond calorie counting and a training plan is huge. And if you offer that complete package, cool. There are not many people who are going to be able to offer that complete package. And a lot of the time, coaches are spreading themselves far too thin because they're trying to teach you how to solve your mindset forever rather than telling people how to cope with their mindset whilst dieting or whilst going through their process. They're actually trying to solve the person's life as opposed to the stage that they're at. And that's all life is just different stages. So, are you guiding people on how to be better at the stage they're at? Are you inspiring people to want to take action? Are you showing them that the thing they're dreaming of and the thing they can only imagine is actually possible? So are you giving an example of people that you've worked with who are in your niche, who have went from that place of terrible pain, terrible frustration in what they do, to loving life and it being a complete 180? Are you inspiring people as well? And the third thing, are you giving people hope? Are you giving them hope that you won't give up on them, that you can be the thing that will solve their problems? So for me, guidance, inspiration, and hope are the three areas that you really need to make sure you're hitting in your content, especially as a fitness coach. There are other industries that guidance, hope, and inspiration won't cut it, but this kind of industry that is so personal and is so personal to the prospect, you have to come from that angle. You know, you have to come from the sympathetic angle to a degree. You know, there are some coaches don't want to go down the sympathetic route. That's fine. But even just being able to show people that you can make their life that little bit better because you acknowledge where they are still comes from that sympathetic angle. So when you're in that kind of service person to person business, you have to cover those three things, I believe.
Yeah, and it's an easy one sometimes to do as well. Like when you say like try and oversell in a way in terms of like this will solve everything. Like your business will be better, your your business revenue will be better and stuff like that. But realistically, if you maybe just tunnel in on the fitness side of things, they can kind of piece together how
Yeah.
energy confidence would then push
Yeah.
business life. Is there any big mistakes you see coaches making that they can easily like mistakes they're making and are solvable from a content perspective? I don't know
Mhm.
if you find yourself
Yeah,
observing that.
absolutely. Critiquing. No, no. I think the biggest mistake is coaches will do something, whether that be a blunt post, whether it be a results post, it'll get them a great result, and they will literally copy and paste and repurpose. Repurposing is great, repurposing is cool. There is a time and a place for repurposing. But this direct copy and paste of what you've done becomes predictable, and predictability to your audience becomes boring. So, what I see a lot is, again, let's use this blunt post as an example. The last Monday of the month, coaches will put out a blunt post. And the first time they do it, it worked really well, amazing. They get clients, they sign clients, they're happy. Then the next month, they go to the last Monday of the month, they put it out again, they still get people, but they get fewer people. Now, I'm not saying that the second something doesn't go right for you, change it, move away. However, that'll go on for months and months and months, right? And then 6 months down the line, they're doing it and they know they're not going to get anybody from it, but they're not intervening with the problem before it becomes a serious problem. So, again, that just comes back to data. It just comes back to understanding, yes, there'll be fluctuations and variations and people jumping on board, but when you see the trend of things going downhill and they are continuing to go downhill, something needs to change. And a lot of the times when things go downhill on Instagram with content and even with email marketing, it's because they're doing the direct copy and paste of the blunt post, of the transformation, of the value post, of the objection post, whatever it's going to be. They are just copying and pasting, and they're not putting that new slant on it. They're not coming at it from a different angle. They're just rinsing and repeating. And I can understand why some people do it. If you're not the most creative person and you've done one thing and it worked really well, I understand why you would want to copy and paste and do it again. And again, there is a place for it, and there might be things that you can do that with, but on the whole, you can't do that with content, and that's the biggest mistake that I see.
Yeah, almost treating it a bit like the data they coaches probably have from a client perspective. Like here's what works well, here's
Yeah.
what could be better, and then refining it. Um, One thing I was just super curious on coming into it, into this call, I think both being in the UK, so it's an interesting perspective. Um, how have you found being a business owner and like sales and collecting cash and focusing on on that as a whole? Like, I know for me anyway, like in a lot of people in the UK can be a bit of a sticky
Yeah.
mindset to get
Yeah.
into. Was that something? Yeah.
I think from my perspective of it now versus my perspective of it a couple of years ago is completely different. And I think a couple of years ago, I think you're automatically in this scarcity. You're automatically in this, I need people to come to me. I need to prove to myself that this can work, and I need to make these sales. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad place to start from. I think the real drive and that real need to be able to do something to prove to yourself will be the thing that will get you going. But compared to where I am at the moment, I'm my, again, complete transparency, my sales process, if a sales expert came in and had a look, I think they would have a heart attack, right? I don't have a very specific route that I want to, funnel people through to be able to get them to spend X amount with me. My sales process has always been to meet the person where they're at. So if somebody comes into my DMs and they say, hey, I'm a brand new coach, I don't have any clients, how can you help me? I'm not going to plug my highest ticket thing to them. That's just not going to work, right? So I'm going to meet them where they're at, and I'm going to say to them, hey, we've got some seriously low cost, one-off purchases or monthly subscriptions. You tell me what's best. They get it, they use it, they come back, and then eventually they get the next thing up and the next thing up and the next thing up, and then eventually we have that conversation where they go, hey, can I hire you to just do this for me? And that's cool. But if I'd pitched that at the very beginning, they would have been turned off and they would never have come back to me. Meet prospects where they're at. And I also think I've got a very kind of abundant mindset to it. And again, that's like a work in progress, right? That's something that has taken a long time and will continue to take a long time. Is that, again, there are endless combinations of people. There are endless amounts of fitness coaches who are my niche. There will always be another client. There will always be another sale, and there will always be another opportunity to make another sale at some point. So not getting too caught up in the nose. And there are loads of people in the kind of fitness space that do similar things to me, or have been about for longer, or do it a bit cheaper, or whatever their thing's going to be. And that's cool. If somebody says no to me, I trust that they'll go and find the help they need from somebody else, and that's fine. But there will always be more. There's never going to come a point where there's no inquiries, no sales, no new people in my world. As long as I keep going, that will never happen.
Yeah, and it's I'm trying to hold like do like pinch myself of a similar thing, because the more you kind of think about like there's not going to be any sales, or there's not going to be
Yeah,
like these things can go horribly wrong, the more you kind of bring attention to it, the more you probably slow yourself down. Whereas like our money is infinite kind of mindset, and
yeah,
like there's always going to be clients around, it is so much easier to like actually come in from a
yeah.
like genuine, I guess, caring position, rather than pitching something that's like not the right fit.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've always told myself that you said there, like if money is the thing you're after, which again we're all in business, right? We're all after some form of bracket of money, or some form of bracket of freedom that requires a certain amount of money, right? There's an infinite amount of money, and there's an infinite way that you can go and get that money. You need to just find the path to getting there. And I think that's it can be quite a daunting way, because you go, well, how do I find the path? But when you break it down into it's very simple, people have it, you want it, you just need to find out how to get it. I find that quite helpful at times.
Yeah, and then that the other point to that as well was really interesting, in terms of like there's an infinite amount of ways to get it, and
Yeah,
because there is, it doesn't mean you should try and like say yes to everything
yeah,
to do
yeah,
it. Because I know like for myself and coaches, it's like, oh, I can do a low ticket thing, I can do a high ticket thing, and it's like that's when the focus kind of drops off.
absolutely.
Um, has there been anything in particular you found helpful when it comes to jumping on sales calls or talking to people in the DMs? I know coaches can have like anxiety around it sometimes, or can get in a rut in terms of sales, in terms of uh, I guess even maybe just like not wanting to do it, or wanting to like even maybe outsource it sometimes.
Yeah.
to
The first thing I would say is if somebody comes to you, they're actively interested, that gives you permission to tell people more. Whether they've said, hey, tell me everything about your program, or hey, I'm a little bit interested. Like, either way, they've given you permission to talk to them. Just remember that people in your DMs are humans, right? And DMs is, you're just texting somebody, right? If somebody texted you saying, hey, can you tell me more about your service? You'd probably, in a very chatty way, text them back. We're all used to it, we're used to texting. But the minute it comes into DMs, I think coaches just associate DMs with sales. Sales are sticky, it's complicated. Oh my God, I don't want to do it. It's just a person that sent you a message. Like it really isn't that complex. Now, the point in time, when it comes to things like outsourcing, is when you have tried and you cannot get that conversion. Like the way you're going about it is just not right. Or you've got so much coming in that you don't know what to do with it, right? And you need a hand with it. But again, I think you have to go through it. You have to experience it for yourself. You have to have had a couple of inbounds. You have to have replied to them and knowing whether it's got them in or not got them in. So again, it's process, it's data, it's finding what works. But they're just a person that sent you a message, and it really isn't that deep a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's that big thing as well. You say like if you come into it from a position of like I actually want to build a rapport rather than sell, especially at the beginning, it's like it should remove a bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the other side of it I find really interesting is like the side in terms of outsourcing and working with someone. What I sometimes see happen is like more from a DM perspective, sales a little bit, but like people coaches would sometimes like outsource uh DMs completely to like a VA from maybe the Philippines, and then they'll be like, this is not working, and it's like this they're meant to be doing it all and it's not
Yeah.
working, but like you should kind of technically know either delegate it because you know it works and here's this process to do it, or if it doesn't work, like you say, make it work first kind of thing with someone before you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, like, things like, VA work and doing DMs and stuff, that's not what I do. But I am in an industry that I hear all these conversations going on and I hear people telling me about their experience. And it's like anything, everyone wants as much as they can have for as little as possible, cash wise and time wise as well. And I think a lot of the time people think that a VA will solve the problem, and actually, a lot of the time, they're just plugging the problem until you, as the business owner, find a solution to it.
Yeah. It's exactly, and I think if it doesn't work, is if it doesn't work with the business owner doing the DMs, like it's likely going to be often, very often, a skill drop anyway. So it's like
Yeah,
even less likely to work, and
yeah,
it's very similar, I guess, to sales calls.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, I know you touched on launches and then offers and stuff like that. Did you have any kind of big rule of thumbs in terms of that a post once a week? How many kind of typically is there any kind of posts you have leading up to a launch post, and how does it typically look? If people wanna.
Absolutely. So my kind of launch process, excuse me, my launch process is around about 2 weeks. And my launch process takes you from filling up your pipeline, because when you launch, you need people to launch to, right? And that's why a lot of launches don't work, is because there's nobody primed, ready to buy. And again, people will do the launch and they'll go, oh, it didn't work. And you say, right, well, who was in your pipeline? What's a pipeline, right? So your pipeline is a bank of people that have taken an action, expressed interest. They are more than just a follower or a subscriber. You're aware of them because they've done something. You need to build that pipeline, and building that pipeline will look like having a lead magnet of some variety, some delivery, whatever it's going to be, and having a way of tracking people that are watching, consuming, reading, whatever it is. Easiest way is an email opt-in. Get people to opt into it. You then have a list of people that are actively interested in what you do. Okay, pre-launch, go to those people. Again, treat them like human beings and tell them that you have this thing coming out. You have this thing that is going to be launched on socials, it's going to be launched on emails. Because you have taken the action of downloading or viewing or whatever it is, this lead magnet, I'm going to give it to you first, right? I'm going to give you the opportunity to jump on board before anyone else, before the spaces fill up, before time runs out, whatever your scarcity and urgency is going to be. You've done 2 steps of it. In those 2 steps, the lead magnet and the conversations that follow, you will scoop up the most people. That is where you'll get the biggest influx of people, because you've had a human interaction with them. You have manually sent that message. You have manually went through that process. You've reached out and spoken to them based upon an action that they've taken. It's personal. When you come out on social media, there might be people that you've sent that message or that email to that have not responded to you, but the launch is the thing that brings them over into your world. Amazing. You might also get the few odd people that you have never heard of or never seen in your audience before that reach out. That's also good. That's also a really good, positive to take from it, is you can get cold people into brand new clients. You'll also get people that have previously been interested but didn't go for the lead magnet, so therefore didn't get the message or the email, but the launch is the thing that brings them over the line. So for me, launching is about more than just that social media launch. It's about more than just that post or couple of posts. It's about more than just that email that you send. It's, again, the process leading up to it. Now, a launch on its own, once you've done that process beforehand, a launch on its own really is just there for the urgency. So it's there for the take action now. It's there for the get on board now. And launches, when done properly and done, in a way that works for your business, become incredibly predictable for what the result's going to be. So therefore, you can start to plug launches into your business, maybe at times that are quieter than normal. Maybe at times you want a revenue boost. Maybe at times you need a client boost, a numbers boost. So then you can start to get really kind of, I suppose, picky and choosy as to when you're launching, where you're launching, because you've got a system that works. That would be my or that is the most successful launching system that I've seen. I've tested it, I've tried just doing the social media and email launch. It works, it's cool, but it's like putting it on steroids when you then add in the steps beforehand.
Yeah, and it's having those personal conversations as well,
Yeah.
then it makes it super easy. And you can also see like if there's any objections as well people have, you can
Yeah.
see it like actually one-to-one in
Yeah.
conversations. Um, what would you, so just like from I guess like last couple from I guess overall productivity mindset perspective, like what's the mindset you go into when it comes to creating content at the moment? Like how do you think about, okay, here's the like what's the kind of thought process you have when it's like it's time to create content or plan it out?
So my process has no process at the beginning, and then I do more of like a refining process as opposed to a creating process, just because it's just the way my brain works. So I find for me, it's like first thing in the morning, the first task I do is create. That's just when I'm at my most productive. And one thing that I would urge anybody to do is whenever you feel most creative, go with it. Because see, when you say, I've had an idea, I'll come back to it, it's gone, you're never coming back to it. Just like do it there and then. So my process is, I usually wake up with an idea, and the idea will either be, a series of posts, a series of emails, it could even be an offer that I'm going to curate. I have the idea, I sit down and I make it. I will just sit, whether it's on Canva, Google Documents, or making my landing pages or whatever, just sit and make it. And usually I make it and I walk away and I'll come back later or the next day, and then I start refining. So usually when you have an idea for something, you're a bit excited about it, right? So you start to like kind of like word vomit, the thing that you're trying to say. And actually when you come back to it in a more kind of, calmer approach to it, and you're not this excited child that's just had this idea, you then start to be able to pull out the bits that are completely irrelevant, or the bits that just don't matter, or the bits that you have said 15 times that nobody needs to read 15 times. So my process is really just to get it down on paper and refine further down the line. The refining process for something like a social media post, very quick. get it out there, go through it. It's good to go. It's good to be scheduled. Same for an email. Things like landing pages and things like offers, I will probably sit with them for a couple of days, because I know myself, throughout the day and throughout the week, my energy, my mindset, and my perspective changes. So I want to make sure that every offer, every landing page, every chunky piece of content that goes out there has been viewed through my lens of those three different ways. So it's been viewed as somebody who is excited about this offer and just wants to tell people. It's viewed by somebody who can take the kind of more critical stance point on it and really, like technically rip it to shreds. And it's also been viewed by somebody that has the data and the knowledge to know whether it will work or it won't work. So yeah, I'm more of a create and then refine kind of person.
Yeah, and it's then having the thought process to review it and like
Yeah,
keep refining it. Um, I have like stuff come up and I just WhatsApp myself a message to myself
yeah,
as
yeah,
an idea and a topic.
yeah,
Um, in terms of time you would spend, is there like an average time or like an amount of time you feel is like enough to spend or like adequate from a content creating
yeah,
perspective across socials, or just so you're not like, spending too much time like
yeah.
changing the outline by like 1 inch on
Yeah, like
Canva?
faffing about on
Yeah.
Canva. First thing I would say is like Canva is probably the thing that will suck the most time when it comes to content, right? Just because it's easy to play about with. And as humans, we want an easy route, right? So we want to do the thing that is feels the easiest. And also, Canva is the thing that you can do one thing to, and it can make a huge difference. So then we get that kind of, suppose it comes into like that like dopamine hit of like, oh, I've done a thing, like I've made it look different, it looks amazing, what else can I do? And you keep going with it. Whereas compared to like, writing on a Google document and changing a word, it doesn't give you that like satisfaction to, to look at it kind of visually. So my process is always write the copy first and then create the image, because the image is there to complement the copy. The copy is the thing that will get people buying. The image is not the thing that will get people buying as a fitness coach. If you're a designer, 100% your images should be your focus. But as a fitness coach, your images are not the thing that people are going to look at and go, oh my goodness, they can create an amazing image. They can create an amazing body for me. That's not where the relevancy comes in. Timings for me would be the longest piece of time for a piece of content should be on the copy. It should be on the caption or the email. And then you should give consideration to when is this going out, why is this going out, and where's it going? So what platform is it going on to? And then for me, it should be pairing up or creating an image. You might even just be pairing it up with, what I call like a normal image of you, just a photo that's been taken. Or you might need to jump on Canva and make, a design, an infographic, whatever it's going to be. Don't get too caught up in it having to be perfect. But equally, over time, you will find your style. So I know that for me to create a post, I mean, if anybody jumps on my Instagram, once I tell you this, you'll see it. I take an image, I fade it into a black background, I take it down to 40% transparency, I put my Anton text all in capitals and I highlight a word in gold. It takes me about 30 seconds to make an image, but that's only because I've done it 1,000 times, or however many hundreds of times I've done it. But then I've also done it hundreds of times that it's never been posted because I've done it just to practice. So again, it's process. It's find something that works and just go for it. And if it becomes one of those things, it's sucking your time, you just don't want to do it, and it looks a bit shit and you're not getting anywhere with it, then yeah, go and outsource it. But you have to go through it and kind of try it yourself to begin with.
Yeah, and it's that thing of again like outsourcing with the expectation is a time
Yeah,
saving thing as well, which is
yeah,
going to be really valuable.
yeah,
Um, Awesome. Yeah, and I find the same with like, like a single picture of like anyone just doing anything outside in the real world is probably going to do
yeah,
just as well from a performance
absolutely.
standpoint with a good
Yeah,
copy.
it shows you're human, and people quite like that. They like to know that you're an actual person and not just the coach that you're kind of marketing yourself as.
Yeah, and it's like it's that tendency of like finding the right balance behind like branding, like logos and making it super professional,
Yeah.
but then having the other side of it. What are some of the traits or mindset habits, I guess, or traits from like the top clients you've worked with? Like, do you see them do or obsess about anything in particular? Is there anything, do they have a set wake up time that's the same? Or
Yeah. I see them obsess over the process and I see them obsess over the data. They also don't get emotionally attached to things. Um, so what I mean by that is some people can get really emotionally attached to, doing something a certain way. Like let's say on their Instagram, let's say, like take the example I just gave for myself there, the way that I create a post, right, with my fade and my gold and all this kind of stuff, right? If somebody came to me, or if multiple people came to me and the data suggested to me that that is horrific and people don't like it, I need to move on from that. I can't dig my heels in and say, well, I like it. I'm not buying from me, right? I'm not trying to help me. I'm trying to help other people. So you can't get emotionally attached to it. And the changes that I see in people, again, some kind of like top clients, is that they are willing to change when I have the kind of evidence to come to them and say, here's why I think you need to change, because I've seen XYZ. I can prove to you that XYZ would work better. I can prove to you that what you're doing right now is on a steady decline. So it's being able to make that change, but a well-informed change without being emotionally attached to it. They're the biggest. That's single-handedly the biggest thing is not being emotionally attached and being open to hearing other perspectives, but only hearing other perspectives when there's something to back it up. Because it's all very well having an opinion, and even though it's my job to help people with this and write copy and do the launches and stuff like that, I can have an opinion, but I can also have the facts, the data that I've acquired, and I can share my opinion, but I can't use my opinion to back up a thought, but I can use my data to back up an opinion, you know?
yeah, and it's that as well. Like when you do have the data, it almost, I find it removes a lot of the stress around it because it then just turns into like a numbers game in terms of like
Yeah, totally,
what yeah, it's not a personal thing against you. It's like
totally.
um amazing. I think that's the biggest kind of stuff. Was there anything else you wanted to add or anything else now like any other kind of big like takeaways you've had or anything like that, and we can look at wrapping up, I think.
I think we've covered a lot, haven't
Yeah.
we? I think we've covered a lot of content, and I think the biggest things for anybody to take away is, although it's not the sexy stuff and it's a wee bit boring and all this, it really does come down to data. It really does come down to process, and it really does come down to trial and error. And that's a hard one to hear in business. Like nobody wants to hear that they're going to make a mistake or do something that doesn't work, but just like fitness coaches will tell their fitness clients, some things will work and some things won't work, and you have to find what sticks. When you find what sticks, get all the data you can with it and start to mold and adapt it into your way of doing things. And when the decline happens, because a decline will happen in every stage of your business at some point. The way you deliver a program will work for a period of time, something will change, it'll decline. You must change with the times. Content is exactly the same. Um, you have to be ready to pivot when the market pivots, and you have to be willing to meet people where they're at. Otherwise, you're just going to feel like you're going up against everyone at every time. Whereas actually, I think social media and email marketing should be a nice kind of addition to a prospect's life and shouldn't cause any friction in their mind and in your mind as well.
Yeah, and one thing with that I found helpful is to remove some of the like try and remove some of the emotional attachment towards like I've done it this way, this is like
Yeah,
perfect, and it's like it's my thing, and it's like
yeah,
it almost maybe have a bigger mission, but be happy and be okay with like
yeah,
changing the vehicle along the way to get
yeah.
there. And it's always going to be a learning process. Um, for your stuff, so the content club and your one-to-one help with coaches, like where can people find you for that? And then when would you say is the right time for them to look into and I think that's gonna take people to see all your
Sure.
kind of camera graphics as well.
Sure. So the best place to find me that also has loads of free resources linked to my bio is on Instagram, and my handle is at Coaches Content Creator. You'll see me pop up, and inside the bio, we've got like a mini launch that you can get completely free of charge. We've also got some super low cost kind of like template bundles to get you started on understanding how to write good copy as well. The point in which you should ask for help, again, it varies. So, things like I was saying there, the stuff that's in my bio, I would say that's more tailored for either people that are completely brand new, or they are really strapped for time and they need a hand with things. But at the point where you want somebody to do the work for you and you want somebody to really do the heavy lifting of the content, so i.e., we write for clients, and then we literally just send it to them in a document and they go, cool, I'm going to post it, that's amazing. That point, you have to be more advanced, because we can write technically very well for you and we can write in a way that will convert people, but I can't convert people into something that the coach isn't clear about. So the people that we do the one-to-one work for are clear. They are super clear. They know what they're doing. They know how they're doing it. They know where their leads are coming from, and they know where their business is going with certainty. That's not everybody. So, there are many things along the way. There are, bundles of templates that we can give you that are all fully customizable. You pop your niche in, you pop your desired outcomes in, and everything's handwritten. There's no chat GPT here, any of that. So there's loads of things to help you along the way. Launching is also something we focus on. So we've got our launch toolkit that templates everything that I spoke about earlier in terms of building that pipeline, sending those messages, doing the launch, all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge range of content options that we have. And yeah, it's where will meet you where you're at kind of thing.
Amazing. Yeah, there'll be links to your social media channels down below on YouTube. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning into this podcast episode. Susan, it's been a pleasure. It's been so much kind of cool stuff to kind of geek out on from a content
Thank you.